The bad USB was covered in a story by Ars Technica back in 2014. In this article, Stuxnet was referenced as an example where USB sticks were used to load malicious code into a machine. The article states that inserting a USB is the equivalent of extending full trust of your computer to another party. Bad USB attacks have been referred to in the past as USB switchblades, as seen in my example clip of the online show Hack.5. This method of attack is still new, with not much documentation of noteworthy mainstream instances and few sources that do not require custom hardware, such as a Flipper Zero. The term bad USB seems to have been coined sometime back in the mid-2010s, shortly before WannaCrypt. USB technology had increased in power drastically upon the upgrade from USB 2.0 to 3.0 at nearly 10 times the rate of data transfer. Although the term was not officially recognized as a security term until this late, people have been using USBs for middleman attacks for years beforehand. In my example, the bad USB switchblade is formatted and then loaded with custom firmware that spoofs an identity in the machine. In older versions of Windows, there used to exist Microsoft accounts used for remote access on every machine that would be used for support if the owner so requires. These accounts have administrative privileges. By using a .vv file with code to force an autorun sequence, the USB could then be used to gather information about the system and network to be sent via email to the attacker. It could also be used to forcibly run inputs that would result in downloading malicious software. The previously mentioned Flipper Zero is an external hardware device that has several different functions and open user customization. GitHub has many open source repositories that have code to be run on this device, including some bad USB payloads. Many alternatives to a traditional bad USB are antiquated since 3.0 USBs are no longer being produced, and security has become integrated into almost all modern operating systems. Here is my example clip from the online show Hack.5.
What that basically does is puts a separate partition on this little USB key here that looks to Windows like a CD-ROM.
Which means it will auto-run without question.
Without question, because normally when you plug in a removable hard drive or a USB key, you get little pop-ups that says, hey, what do you want to do? You know, play music or photos or open a folder. This is just like popping in a CD, like you'd pop in your Battlefield 2 CD and it pops up the installation.
So what happens if you plug it into a Windows machine?
Well, it will work on Windows 2000 and above machines, and the limitation on that is that it needs to be a machine that's logged in with administrative privileges. I get this little, hey, removable disk, right?
And now that's the big partition, that's the actual USB thumb drive. So what happened? What did we just hack? What did we gain from this?
Sure, let's take a look at the scripts. Okay, so if I go into my computer, you can see that I have now the E drive, which is the CD-ROM partition, and I have the F drive. Now, when I open the CD-ROM partition, you see I have my autorun.inf file here, and if I edit that, you can see all it does is run this go.vbe. That's a Visual Basic script. Now, this Go Visual Basic script is what allows us to invisibly run our payload, which is located on the read-write partition of our USB key. So if we go into here, what it runs is in our WIP directory under CMD, this CMD file or batch file, and that's what our payload is. It's doing some PW dump to grab the LM hashes from that machine. It's also stealing product keys. It's getting our URL history from Internet Explorer. It's also getting, it's creating a backdoor, which we'll get into later. It's doing all sorts of fun stuff. In fact, in later versions and in another version that somebody else created, Amish, created one that even steals your AIM and MSN passwords and stuff like that. And if we go in here, it names it based on computer name. Deep Blue being my workstation in my room, and Artbook being this notebook right here.
Okay, so we've got the information we need. What do we do with it now?
Well, all we did was plug it in, wait a few seconds, it created that log file, we can eject it, we can head over to our machine back home, and now we can crack that hash.
Right, now this is an LM hash?
This is an LM hash, and those have some certain weaknesses, which we'll talk about in a moment. So let's quickly take a look at the log file that this has created. Now, I've got an IP config in here, so I know what the IP address is of that machine, so I can remotely access it later. It also gives me the LM hashes, and gives me product keys, which I'll probably be blanking out in post, as well as LSA secrets, which are other interesting things that Windows stores that it probably shouldn't be doing.